Welcome to A Founder's Life. I'm your host, Leo Gestetner. On this show, we dive into the real stories behind the highs and lows of entrepreneurship and how we pursue a more balanced and meaningful life along the way. This podcast is brought to you by Thanks, helping founders like us scale with reliable remote talent. Email founders@thanks.com. That's THANKZ.com. Now, I'm excited to be joined today by Bradley Swineheart. Bradley, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Brad Swineheart. Right now, I'm Chief Growth Officer at Oxford Advisory Group here in Florida. Have had just a wonderful career that's led me to this point. Lots of highs and lows. So very excited to hop in today and kind of chat with you about this stuff.
Thank you for introducing yourself and joining us today. And would you like to talk a little bit about your journey that brought you to where you are today, then a little more about your business and what you're doing for your clients as well?
Yeah, I'd love to. So kind of what we do now is on the financial advisory side. We specialize in helping retirees, but to get there was a kind of an unusual path for me. I started in sales and marketing. I went to school for a marketing degree, went through kind of numerous, just kind of like retail positions, like working my way up in the sales organizations and kind of stumbled into the financial advisory world. It was marketing first, sales second, and then kind of stumbled into this world where you can actually impact someone's lives, just by giving them education, giving them a firm understanding of how finances work, how retirement works. And it was pretty wild. If you shoot back, 20 years ago, before I even started in sales and marketing, I'm lifting bricks, I'm doing construction work, and then kind of found a passion for, well, how do you take a concept and distill it down into something that people can understand? And I just thrive in that mentality of, okay, we've got all this complex stuff out there in the world, and it's hard for everybody to understand this stuff, especially the way that it's presented. So how do you take a complex subject, break it down into bite-sized pieces that people can understand? Doing that through sales organizations led me to the financial world. And then it was like, hey, this is something that you can really impact someone's life with. If you can really get these concepts across to families, you can impact their retirements, generations to come, really set themselves or help them set themselves apart from some of the mistakes that other people are making.
That's great. I think, I was on a podcast, I had a guest on my podcast recently, and he said to me, where do most people become entrepreneurs? Like, why is probably a better word, and what gives them the idea. And I said, well, actually, I think most people actually fall into it. They end up with an idea that makes sense and a business grows from there. But they don't go out to it saying, I want to be an entrepreneur. So what you were saying made a lot of sense.
I think you're spot on. I think that people, on the flip side too, people that want to be entrepreneurs but don't have a good idea, like those are the people that end up struggling, right? Because they like the idea of the glamour behind being an entrepreneur, right? Set your own hours, potential lots of money, all this stuff. And they see this world of entrepreneurship as the lifestyle. And then they say, well, what kind of idea can I do to get into that world? I think those people tend to struggle more than, like you said, the people that say, hey, I've got this great idea. I'm trying to implement it in the current structures. It's not working. I'm just going to go do it myself. And I think that passion leads people to be more successful.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Talk to us a little bit about what family looks like for you.
Family is just everything. Like we've talked about this before, family is everything. Wife, 3 daughters, wonderful. They're growing into real people now. The youngest is just turning 20. The oldest is 23, going through the whole college thing. We dealt with the COVID era college, which was a mess. And, now seeing them kind of persevere through that and pursue real careers now. They're starting to settle into themselves. You've got kids where they start becoming more and more like real people. You mold less, you coach more, and it's a pretty wonderful experience. I had the unique perspective about a year and a half ago. We live in Florida. About a year and a half ago, entire house, everything we owned, everything that you grew up with throughout your entire lives that you've collected was just totally washed away with a hurricane. And it was myself, my wife, and 2 of our kids that were here during the hurricane. And we were here. We watched the water 4 foot high inside the house, wiped everything out. And, stood at the porch of the neighbor's house, and they had a nice high house. We had a not. And you watch everything get wiped away, and that sort of perspective when you're with your family through that, right? Like the next day we got to work. Nobody complained. Obviously there was a lot of emotions, but you made it through without arguments, without negativity. And I think that was just a huge, not only bonding experience, but also just a massive growth opportunity for everybody involved. And, I would never put my kids through that on intentionally, but I think they really benefited from seeing like, hey, mom and dad just got knocked down to the lowest they've ever been. And what did they do? Well, they got up the next morning. They went over and they started getting shovels and working on the house. That's just what you had to do.
I'm sorry to hear that. And, I guess that's if you want to live in paradise in Florida, that is one of the
Yeah.
disadvantages.
Yeah, I always say it's wonderful down here, except for maybe one day of bad weather. But you know, just we're all safe, we're all fine. It's just stuff, and having that perspective just hammered home. Like you always say that when you're trying to be successful, or even when you make success, that it's stuff. Family's important, but it puts it to the test when you lose all your stuff. All at once.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. We had that discussion a few years ago with the fires in LA.
yeah,
We were okay, but it was with lots of friends who weren't, and there was certainly a big risk that we wouldn't have been okay. And we were discussing as a family, what would we take with? And
yeah.
my opinion is sort of not a lot, really, in the grand scheme of things. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Um,
that's what we found afterwards. It was like, you know what? I couldn't tell you stuff that we lost. There's a couple of keepsakes here and there that really, really hurt, and when you saw like the baby photos and the stuff from when they were kids that you just can't get back, like that was pretty impactful, especially on my wife. But you can make new memories. You share. We get to reach out to all our family and say, hey, do you have baby photos? Do you have when they were little? And that just it's another bonding experience with the family. So everything's good. I mean, we're much stronger for it. And I think that when you become an entrepreneur, you're going to go through those same things. You're going to have plans. You're going to build a house. You're going to build a family. You're building a business. You've got this path that you want to follow. And every entrepreneur is going to run into something that just feels like they get totally wiped out. And
Very, very true. That is the entrepreneurial journey.
yeah, and being able to get up and keep going after that, that's what makes or breaks an entrepreneur. If that, hey, at some point I'm going to get totally devastated and I need to maybe change my path, maybe rethink how I'm doing things, but then keep going, right? That's the thing that the most successful people in the world, I mean, a lot of them, if you look at some of the just absolute, just off the charts successful people, they've had devastations in their careers where they made their first million, lost it all, and then built it all up again. And for most people, getting to that height once would be enough. But for the diehard entrepreneur, that those swings are going to come in.
Very, very true. And tell me, how does health look for you?
Health, well, I mean, you and me both, right? We love exercise. We love staying healthy. For me, that's lifting weights. That's eating as clean as I can, when, avoiding the sweet stuff and stuff. But it's important. You only get one body, right? I was crazy enough a couple of years ago when I turned 40, I entered a bodybuilding competition, won a couple of little trophies, like put yourself through that extreme, hired a trainer. I was lucky enough to work with John Simmons. This trainer happens to be the same guy who coaches the current Miss Olympia, who's won, I don't know, the last 7 years in a row, Andrea Shaw. She's amazing. She's a wonderful person. But I just kind of happened into working with this guy because we both lived in Detroit, and so I got to use that experience to kind of push your body to these extremes that you've never even imagined it could do. And for me, after that, it was like, okay, let's chill, let's drink some water, right? But maintaining that dedication to health is important, right? You have to keep your body a well-oiled running machine. I still hit the gym every day. I like doing weightlifting. I like to keep the strength up. Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite of you. I'm not really into cardio, right? I do it if I have to. But just that mentality for me, it all kind of blends together. If you're going to be, an entrepreneur, you're going to be a family person, you're going to be into health or fitness, it all comes back to the same mentality of determination and, kind of removing options that are bad for you. I don't do this because It's just not an option for me, right? There's no cake in the fridge. If someone says, "Hey, you want a piece of cake?" I just say no because it's in my brain. I've already conditioned to it. That's not an option, right? That's a no. This is you're going to eat your boring chicken, your boring rice, and that's okay because you have other bigger things in mind. And I think that all tiles back to family, tiles back to entrepreneurship, where it's the same thing, right? If you can carry that mentality through all streams of your being, then life, it's not easy, but it is simple, right? Like you have your path set forward. Like during the hurricane, it was not an option to take out frustrations on the family. Right. They're going through the same thing we are. So if you're frustrated, that's not an option. So it was easy. And same thing with being an entrepreneur. It's not, you don't get to turn it off. That's one of the things that I'm sure and every other person out there who starts a business realizes is that you don't set your own hours. You're always working, right? That's how it works in reality. Until you're ungodly successful, you're always working. And I think that understanding that mentality that goes through health, entrepreneurship, all of it.
Yeah, I mean, always working, but it's about finding the balance. So your to-do list may never be done, but
Yeah.
doesn't mean you need to be always working. Your mind may always be active, but
Yeah.
it's important to actually find ways to find that balance. And talking about that, what do you like to do for fun?
The balance is always critical, right? Because if you're not well rested, you're not in there. When you're first starting a business, it's entirely different than when you're running a business. But you're right. It's a mental game. Like you're always inside of it. For me, fun is family time. I work, I go to the gym, and then when it's time to relax, I want to hang out with my wife. I want to hang out with my kids. We do a lot of boring stuff. We do puzzles. We play we play a lot of Rummikub and a Monopoly deal card games and stuff like that. And it's just that's it. We throw on a record. We're at the house. We lounge by the pool. We walk the beach. But it's just how many of the people that I love can I cram around me at one point? That's my relaxation. That's my fun.
I don't know if I've met many people, certainly outside of the UK, who play Rummy Cup. It's great. I mean, I love Rummy Cup. I
Yeah.
played it as a kid, and my kids play it as well. Yeah, it's a great game, but it's not one you come across. I'm sure there's lots of people in America who play it. It's just not one that you come across
I
typically.
blame it on Dutch ancestry. My grandfather's from the Netherlands, and I mean, that's all we played when I was a kid. So yeah, we've it's infected our household. We've got our own little boards or matches. Like
Yeah,
we come up with our own fun rules to make things harder. It's just it's good times.
excellent. And so we were talking about balance. So, circling back to that, it is important to have a form of balance, which doesn't mean you're always in balance, but it's an overall balance. And for you, how does that come about? How does that look for you?
That's a great question. I think there's two things is you have to understand first and foremost, for me, first and foremost, it's the dedication. It's understanding that things that have to be done still have to be done, whether you want to do them or not. Right. And if you can acknowledge that and you can take care of the things that need to be done as opposed to avoiding them, you're going to free up more time. I think that's something that people don't understand is if you just get done what you have to first, instead of putting that stuff off, well, now it's done. You don't have to worry about it. It's not on your to-do list anymore. Now you can free up time to have that relax and to have that family time. I would say for me to achieve that ultimate balance, there's two things that I really focus on is one, you have to have enough family time, support time, the people that you love being around them. You have to. You can't continually sacrifice that. All it's going to do is make you fail at other aspects of life. And then the second thing is knowing yourself enough to be able to say, hey, you know what? I need to decompress. I need to take a step away. I need to recharge. Knowing that that's not selfish. That's not lazy. It's literally you're protecting your health and your mental being so that you can come back in and do it full strength. A lot of entrepreneurs, I think they get it in their own heads that any day off, any time not working, it's a waste of time. But if you're not fully charged, if you're not able to go into whatever activity you're doing, whether that's family or work with a clear 100% mind, feeling great, then you need to take that step back and recharge so you can get back into it and give it full commitment.
I was giving somebody some advice this morning, a successful entrepreneur I know, about meditating and that as a way to really clear the mind. I've been meditating for over a decade. I think, what you talk about there, which is never off is part of that is a younger entrepreneur's perspective. Part of that is a very American perspective.
Probably. Yeah.
You know, because breaks are important. Now, personally, I'm not the best at taking a complete break, as in I don't completely switch off, but I can go away for a week or whatever and work a couple of hours a day. I do,
Yeah.
I can't completely switch off. I can certainly reduce the amount that I work, but I like to stay on top of stuff. Some people do need to completely switch off. My business partner needs time off. And that's fine. Like each to their own. Everyone needs to work out what they need for their mind to recharge. I can recharge well, even working every day, but just less
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. I think that
Um,
it's a good mindset to have is when you have time off and you say, "Hey, you know what? This is me time." And then you want to work, an hour, 2 hours, I think you're much more productive, you're much more positive about that experience. If you get into that 9 to 5 grind every day, by Friday at noon, you're like, "I'm checked out. Last 5 hours are worthless." But if you say, "Hey, you know what? I've got Friday afternoon off, Saturday and Sunday, I don't have to do anything, but I've got this great idea that'll give me a jump start on Monday." I think you're much more passionate in that hour or 2 that you put in on a Sunday morning than you would be at a Friday at 5 o'clock.
Tell us, what's been a pivotal moment in your life?
I mean, the first thing I go back to is that hurricane, you know? Like, I think that having that life experience where your entire like, it's wild. We moved down to Florida maybe 6 months before that. We bought a fixer-upper, a house, and we spent just months just working this thing, rebuilding it. So I think we were putting that final coat of paint on the outside of the house when that hurricane hit and destroyed everything. The devastation, losing everything, but also you had worked so hard for something that was now entirely gone, and having the willpower to start over and go through all of that again. If anybody's ever done a home project before, you know that these things can drag on. You're living in construction, you want it just to be done, and I think that was a pivotal moment. I think the other probably more impactful pivotal moment was meeting my wife, as cheesy as that sounds, but it's 100% true, because she just the way we get along, she's my biggest advocate. Like, we are both are each other's biggest support system. And I think having that person in your life to say, "Hey, you've had a tough day, you can make it through," or even be persuasive or be encouraging, but still pushing you to drive forward. I think I am 100% of me now, and without her, I'd be much less than that. I probably would have settled in some areas of my life, probably would have been okay with mediocrity, but having that support system and then having a drive to say, "Hey, I want to take care of, the wife. I want everything that she wants. I want her to have it. I want to take care of the kids, make sure that they are, that they can achieve the things that they want to achieve." Having those extra factors in life, and not only as a support system, but then as a motivator to keep going, to reach that next level. And I think, you know, finding pure motivation that is also supportive. I mean, that's what every successful entrepreneur has to have.
Definitely needs some motivation. What's one piece of advice you would give to an aspiring entrepreneur?
Just one. I'm gonna give two. How about that? The first thing I think is just the mindset and the dedication. That is what will make you successful. Knowing that, having confidence in yourself, but knowing that, hey, I'm gonna get this done. I'm gonna move forward despite the obstacles. I think that is key. Having a support system built around you enables you to do that. So I think set up your base and then find a way to establish that determination, and that mindset will get you very, very far in life. And I think the second thing for most businesses to be successful, they should probably be a marketing company first and a business second. And you could do the best service, the best product, the best anything in the world. If you don't have people in your lobby, you don't have people looking at your wares, you will be unsuccessful. So just don't discount the amount of people that you have to tell about what you do in order to find that perfect audience. Not everybody's going to be your perfect client, but you got to go through a lot of people to be able to find that niche. And I think if you can find that determination and let enough people know, you'll be successful.
Excellent. And thank you. And how can people find you?
LinkedIn is the easiest way. Just stalk me on LinkedIn, just Brad Swineheart. I also run a podcast called Be Advised. We're going to bring you on because this is phenomenal. And I want to learn all about your life. But yeah, just feel free to connect with me on there. All my contact information is on there. Shoot me a message. I'm an open book to anybody who wants to pick my brain. Go right ahead.
Well, thank you. And thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, and please leave a review.